NewsFeed for Wednesday, February 16th, 2005. I am Ann Allen.
And I'm Jane Rowe. Tonight on NewsFeed, Channel 4 airs accusations against the university. The Ypsilanti Police Department may be fined for heroism, and U.S. intelligence warns of terrorist attacks. But first up, your campus news.
Last week, WGIV at Channel 4, a local NBC affiliate, ran a story about the staggering ineptness of the university's residence hall security. Men at the university believed that the report was sensational and misrepresented certain facts about the true state of affairs in the residence halls. Others believe that even so, the university's Residence Hall Association has reacted too strongly by recommending that the university pursue legal action against Channel 4. Channel 4's story examined the security at the university, as well as Michigan State University and Wayne State University. The channel claims that the used residence halls are havens for unscrupulous individuals who have right to be in presence in the residence halls. Channel 4 investigators claim that they gained entrance to 3 residence halls on campus, but in fact they really gained entrance to 3 houses within South Quadrangle, which is not the same as 3 different residence halls at all. Channel 4 has pledged to come back to the university to see what progress has been made since the airing of its original story.
A 2001 Nobel Prize-winning economist spoke to an overflowing Hale auditorium yesterday afternoon. Joseph Stiglitz has become recognized worldwide for creating a new branch of economics known as the economics of information. He also has authored an international best-selling book titled Globalization and its Discontents. Stiglitz discussed the theories in this book as well as offered personal anecdotes during his speech on globalization. Stiglitz pointed out many potential problems with globalization and a free market system. He said that third world countries have been hurt by free markets and accused the International Monetary Fund of putting the interests of the United States over those of poorer countries. He also discussed the Clinton administration's difficulties with the North American Free Trade Agreement. Stiglitz has taught at Yale, Princeton, and MIT, and currently holds joint professorship at Columbia University's Business School, School of International Public Affairs and Economics Department.
Effective January 1st, changes in the Greek social policy naming the days of enormous fraternity parties may be over. The Interfraternity Council has investigated changes where non-Greek guests must be on a guest list, and the number of non-Greek guests may not exceed 4 times the number of social monitors. Along with that, an event with more than 25 women or where alcohol is present must be registered with the IFC to ensure an increased level of safety at parties. This poses concerns about Welcome Week and rush activities, where fraternities host large parties hoping to attract freshmen. IFC spokesman John Krasnov, however, says the changes will ensure students are not just interested in fraternities for consuming copious amounts of alcohol, but Rush events will be more about unity and reaching out. Krasnov described Rush as a formal day of open houses followed by a week of formal recruitment. Houses will also host informal events for potential Rushes to attend. Another new policy calls for an IFCA representative to be present at the door of a fraternity house when the house hosts a registered party. Many students find this action to be extreme because, quote, it will be like having parents around at the parties. In regards to alcohol and event registration, the regulations now require attendees to bring their own alcohol if they choose to drink. Students expressed concerns that attendees will be forced to drink more before they leave versus socially drinking less at the house. However, Krasnov is not worried about negative feedback and assumes that everyone will adjust to the new policies in place in order to establish a safer atmosphere and to decrease liability for fraternities. Whether or not students are Greek affiliated, they understand that it will be hard to judge what effect the changes will have until the fall 2005 semester.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a recommendation last week for many people aged 11 to 18 to receive the new meningitis vaccine, Menactra, placing special emphasis on college freshmen living in dormitories, where the rate of infection is nearly 5 times the national average. Although meningococcal infections are rare in the general population, striking only 3,000 Americans each year, the illness progresses rapidly and may lead to brain damage or death in 10% of those infected. The new vaccine confers longer-lasting immunity, but at a higher cost of $80 to $90 a dose. According to the Associated Press, the sudden increase in demand for the vaccine has the manufacturers worried that it may not be able to synthesize the drug quickly enough to meet demand. There may be a shortage of vaccines available to high school and college students as new factories are constructed to meet demands. Here at the university, Director of University Health Services Robert Winfield states that the vaccine will be rationed to the people with the highest need, that is, freshmen living in residence halls, living in tight quarters. Winfield states that UHS maintains stockpiles of MedImmune and is prepared to deal with possible shortages. By targeting individuals 11 to 18 years of age, the CDC hopes to create an inoculated age group that will impede the transfer of disease to future generations.
Turning now to local news. The city of Ann Arbor tries to get out of millions of dollars in debt. Ann Arbor wants to use money from untapped resources like the community television network and city parks to do so. The city faces over $3 million in debt next year. Right now, the money from the CTN and the parks can only be used for those things, but some city officials hope to change that. The city hopes to be able to take some of the reserve money from the millages for city parks as well as some money from CTN's nearly $2 million in reserves. The city is proposing an ordinance where money can be taken from specific funds and be applied to, quote, overall city operations. This move comes as the city continues its effort to streamline departments to save money. The measure must first be approved by the City Council before it can take effect.
The Michigan Court of Appeals denies access to a letter about an EMU scandal. A three-judge panel agreed with the lower court ruling that a letter about the university's president's house should not be made public. The judges came to a split decision. The ruling basically says that open communication among officials is more important than the public interest gained from the release of the letter. The former vice president for business and finance at Eastern wrote the September 2003 letter to Regent Jan Brandon. The letter was about former President Samuel Kirkpatrick's involvement in the construction of University House. The house is a $5.3 million facility that serves as the president's residence as well as a venue for fundraising. The ruling came as a result of a local newspaper's attempt to use the Freedom of Information Act to obtain the letter.
A former Lincoln High School hall monitor was ordered yesterday to face trial on multiple charges. 39-year-old Andre Bond is accused of inappropriate touching of one student and the sexual comments made to another student in the school last year. Prosecutors added one count of second-degree criminal sexual conduct after a 16-year-old testified that Bond groped her while escorting her out of the school. 3 other schoolmates testified that Bond had approached the grope victim more than 5 times before she left the school, halfway through the year. Similar accosting charges pertaining to another victim will be filed by next week. Bond's attorney argued that the allegations may be false, as it was the mother who intervened on the daughter's behalf. Officials say Bond resigned last year from the school. He is free on personal bond and is scheduled to appear in court on March 29th.
A state agency is investigating whether workplace safety regulations were violated. However, this violation occurred while 3 Washtenaw County Sheriff's deputies rushed into a burning apartment last fall and pulled residents to safety. An anonymous complaint was filed with the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration after 3 deputies received 2 awards for heroic efforts. The Sheriff's Department could face sanctions and fines if the administration finds a violation in safety rules. The complaint alleges that the department allowed employees to enter a fire without protective equipment and breathing apparatuses several times. The sheriff has strong reason to believe that the complaint was filed by someone associated with the Ypsilanti Fire Department. Fire Department Captain Brad Johnson said the union did not file the complaint and has no idea who would.
Coming up after the break, we'll have your national and international news.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Ann Arbor's only local news program, NewsFeed. I am Jane Rowe, and turning now to Ann for international news. Ann?
President Bush's top intelligence and military officials said today that terrorists are regrouping for possible new strikes against the United States. They said the best defense was for Congress to approve the president's military and anti-terror budget. But some in Congress, including prominent Republicans, were questioning some of that spending. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld told a House hearing that the government could reasonably predict attacks would come from terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, and other means. Rumsfeld told the House Armed Services Committee that the proposed $419 billion defense package for 2006 would be set an ambitious course to continue prosecuting the war to attack its ideological underpinnings. The current congressional debate over how to allocate billions of dollars on initiatives aimed at spreading peace and ensuring security follows 3 years of massive spending in response to the attacks of September 11, 2001.
A teenager has been accused of using a stolen cell phone to swamp dispatchers with hundreds of bogus 911 calls over a matter of weeks. The 15-year-old boy sometimes was such a nuisance he called in new emergencies at the same address where officers were standing. St. Louis County spokesman Mason Keller said the young suspect was tracked down only after dispatchers fielded 25 bogus calls within 75 minutes to the same area where the officer already had arrived. Despite all the bogus reports, emergency officials responded only 3 times. In other cases, dispatchers recognized the voice of the prankster or the calls came quickly in succession involving the same address or neighborhood. The reported emergencies ran the gamut from assaults to domestic fights to heart attacks. Keller said the teen used a stolen cell phone that was deactivated but could still call 911. Dispatchers can track the location of 911 calls from landline phones but not from wireless ones.
A small jet owned by electronics retailer Circuit City crashed in freezing drizzle Wednesday as it approached the Pueblo airport. 2 witnesses told investigators they heard loud popping noises from the twin-jet Cessna Citation C-560 shortly before the crash at about 9 a.m. The cause of the crash was unknown. FAA spokesman Mike Fergus said the pilot was relying on the plane's instruments to make the airport approach because of poor weather. The National Weather Service reported low clouds, fog, and freezing drizzle with visibly of about 6 miles at the airport at the time. The temperature was 27 degrees. A second company plane landed safely just before the crash. The 8 people aboard that aircraft stood or sat in a lobby at the airport, many with sad expressions. The plane went down about 5 miles east of the airport on sagebrush-dotted grassland between Pueblo and the Army's sprawling Pueblo Chemical Depot. A small fire was quickly extinguished. This is the 4th fatal crash of a small plane in Colorado in the past 3 months. And in international news, Togo's promise of a, quote, free and fair election is now closer now that its army is backing down the coup. Since the installment of Faure Gnassingbé, the son of the late President Gnassingbé Eyadema, who was condemned because there were no true elections, international neighbors have been pressing Togo to form a more democratic government. The Togo army has been backing the installment of Gnassingbé. At least 4 people have been killed in protests against the coup, which has been keeping order during Gnassingbé's installment to the presidency. His term is to end in 2008. The ECOWAS, 15-member economic community of a West African state that has threatened Togo with sanctions unless it returned to the constitutional order. The Togo constitution was altered to Gnassingbé can take the office of president without elections. Since these events, there has been a crackdown on private media. 3 radio stations and a television station have been shut down.
An Italian journalist was kidnapped by a militant group called the Islamic Jihad organization in Iraq to demand that Italian troops be withdrawn from Iraq. The journalist, Giuliana Segrena, is begging Italian and U.S. troops to leave Iraq for her safety. In a tape obtained by the Associated Press shows Ms. Segrena sobbing and begging for help. She is the 8th Italian to be kept hostage. 4 Italians were also taken hostage in Iraq in April. One of them, civilian security guard, was later shot to death by his captors while 3 were released. The militant group claimed to have killed 2 aid workers in September. The Italian Senate is preparing to vote on whether to extend funding of the mission of its 3,000-strong contingent in Iraq.
The U.S. believes that North Korea's nuclear capability has grown. This can pose a major threat to the U.S. North Korea's president, North Korea Pyongyang, declared for the first time publicly that the country has nuclear weapons and threatened to bolster its weapons arsenal. Has produced enough plutonium for 1 or 2 nuclear weapons. Since Bush declared it an axis of evil, CIA Director Porter Goss states that North Korea, quote, continues to develop, produce, deploy, and sell ballistic missiles of increasing range. North Korea is looking for more customers of ballistic missiles. The CIA also believes that North Korea has active chemical weapons and biological weapons programs. By the end of 2002, North Korea had expelled inspectors from the United Nations, International Atomic Energy Agency, and removed the IAEA's monitoring seals and cameras from its nuclear facilities. Party talks aimed at ending North Korea's nuclear program have since been stalled since September 2004. The U.S. has refused to make concessions to entice North Korea back to the multilateral talks.
About 2,000 troops were sent to Amazon to restore order in the region where an American nun was shot to death last weekend in escalating violence between poor peasants and loggers vying for the region's riches. The result of a revolt against the Brazilians who have been trying to conquer the rural area of Ann Arbor for decades. The nun, Dorothy Stang, had been living in the Amazon for decades trying to establish a sustainable development project for poor Brazilians. The area's rich land has been fought over by peasants and loggers. More violence occurred as mourners paid their respect to Stang. 2 assailants gunned down Daniel Soares da Costa, the former president of Parauapebas Rural Workers Union. Troops and police have been working to keep order in the area, but the conflict won't be resolved without a stronger long-term government presence.
And coming up next on NewsFeed, Kevin will have your sports news.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Back to NewsFeed. I'm Kevin, here with your sports. But first, Jane, did you hear about the lockout today?
Oh, I did hear something about it. Tell me more about it, though.
Well, today the NHL decided that they're going to cancel the rest of their season. That becomes the first time in pro sports history that happens.
Oh.
What are your thoughts? Are you going to be sad you're not going to be able to see the Red Wings play this year?
Well, my heart's in St. Louis. I'm a Blues fan, so.
St. Louis, huh?
Yeah.
All right, those sweet Blues.
Yeah.
Well, let's get right into it.
All right.
Good evening. I'm Kevin, and let's get the national sports rolling. United States sports history was made earlier today, as I said, when the National Hockey League became the first pro sports league in North America to lose an entire season due to a labor dispute. The NHL canceled what little was actually left of the season Wednesday after a series of last-minute offers were rejected on the final day of negotiations. A lockout over salary cap shut down the game before it ever got a chance to start in October. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman announced earlier, I have no choice but to announce the formal cancellation of play for 2004-2005 season. A great number of NHLers, however, are already in Europe playing in Russian and Czechoslovakian leagues, and some are even playing for teams in the UHL, baseball's equivalent to the minor leagues. The cancellation of the season sadly means that the Red Wings will have to wait another year to embarrass the Colorado Avalanche on the ice. To Florida now, where only 4 days remain until the Great American Race takes place at Daytona Beach in Daytona, Florida, and I'm fired up. Jimmy Johnson, who won the 2005 Budweiser Shootout at the track last Saturday, will start at the pole, with the rest of the field to be resolved Thursday night during the Twin 150s, in which 2 races will take place in succession to determine the running order of the field. The media has predicted Johnson to win the Nextel NASCAR Cup Championship this year, with teammate Jeff Gordon a close second and Dale Earnhardt Jr. third. Defending Cup champion Kurt Dirty Busch is predicted to finish 5th, while longtime veteran Rusty Wallace, competing in his last year of racing on the circuit, was not picked to finish in the top 10. No surprises there. Now to your very own campus, where University of Michigan's gymnast Jenny Daly dominated the field at the Fox Run Invitational, winning titles on vault and the floor exercise, as well as capturing the all-around competition. 2 earned the Big Ten Women's Gymnast of the Week honors, announced today. Daly, a junior, is the 4th Wolverine to earn the honor in the last 6 weeks. Daly won the all-around competition, took her 5th vault title of the year and her 2nd floor title of the season, winning event crowns against 24 competitors from Michigan, Michigan State, New Hampshire, and Northern Illinois. Daly's average score in the vault is tops in the Big Ten. The number 2 Wolverines host West Virginia this Friday at 7:30 p.m. at Chrysler Arena. On a side note, when asked by local media why they are bringing all of their competitors' cousins, brothers, and sisters to the meet, West Virginia released a statement saying, "We like to keep it all in the family." Finally, fans of the University of Michigan women's basketball game against Purdue on Thursday at Chrysler Arena will be eligible to win a limited edition Rose Bowl Collectors Football autographed by Lloyd Carr as part of the Break the Barrier for Mott event. 10 footballs autographed by Carr have been added to the prize pool that already included a 1-year supply of Domino's Pizza, a Sirius satellite radio, an Xbox, and 2 season tickets for the 2005-2006 women's basketball season. Winners will be chosen randomly during the game. If Michigan's home women's basketball attendance record of 4,611 is broken versus Purdue, $1 from every ticket sold will be donated to the Champions for Children campaign currently underway at U of MCS Mott Children's Hospital. The Mott campaign to create a new children's and women's hospital is part of the $2.5 billion Michigan Difference campaign taking place throughout the university. I'm Kevin, and thank you for joining me for the sports. And remember to flush twice, Ann Arbor, because it's a long way to Columbus. That's it for sports. Back to you, Ann.
Thank you for that report, Dean. Animal rescue workers released about 100 birds that were treated for shock and concussions after crashing into building windows last week. The wet-string birds were released yesterday at the Honeywell Wildlife Refuge in South Carolina. About 30 birds remain in the Carolina Wildlife Care. However, these birds were apparently flying under the influence. Officials say the birds were intoxicated on holy berries and became confused as they crashed into windows. Hundreds of drunk birds were injured and about half of them died. Joanna Whitesell is the executive director of the nonprofit group of volunteers, said it was important to release the birds quickly because they were in the middle of migrating. After releasing them, they flew immediately into formation and into the nearest trees. The group plans to release the rest of the birds together at a later date.
Ashley Olsen sues the National Enquirer for the headline, "Ashley Olsen Caught in Drug Scandal." She is suing for $40 million, $20 million for libel, and $20 million for invasion of privacy. The Enquirer said there was nothing in the article to indicate that Olsen used or sold drugs, or that she knew of any drug use by a man whom she has dated, Scott Sertano. The article does show that it accused Sertano of offering people drugs to testify against a former friend in a lawsuit that was later dismissed. And that's it for NewsFeed on this wonderful Wednesday. Make sure to tune in next week for all your local, national, and international news.